Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I wasn't always a head chef at my own restaurant. My journey in the culinary world started almost 30 years ago when I moved to a small coastal town in Australia. My parents had just divorced, and I needed a fresh start away from all the family drama. Cooking had always been my passion, so when I spotted a help wanted sign at a local Mexican restaurant, it felt like fate. The restaurant wasn't fancy, just a modest place with about 15 tables, colorful decorations, and a resident guitarist who played on weekends. But it was home to me. The owner, an elderly gentleman who had fallen in love with Mexican cuisine during his travels, took me under his wing and taught me everything he knew. Within 2 years, I was running the kitchen. Our customers were mostly locals who enjoyed mild to medium spicy food. This was Australia in the 90s after all. Most Aussies back then thought ketchup was spicy. We did keep some extra hot ingredients on hand, mainly for the kitchen staff and our guitarist, who was actually from Mexico and liked his food authentic. One Friday evening when we were busy, a couple walked in. I could tell from the awkward body language that it was a first date. He was talking loudly, gesturing wildly with his hands, while she sat quietly, nodding occasionally. They ordered nachos to share as an appetizer with a side of jalapenos, his request, and when I came out of the kitchen to check on them, the man immediately waved me over. The man complained that the jalapenos weren't hot at all and asked if that was the best we had to offer. I politely told him we could certainly add more spice to his main course if he wanted. He responded arrogantly, explaining that he had traveled across Asia and Latin America, eaten the hottest curries in India and the spiciest street food in Thailand, and that no one had ever been able to make food that was too hot for him. His date looked embarrassed and tried to smooth things over by saying she thought the food was lovely and that she was enjoying the nachos. The man dismissed her comment and continued his rant. He told me he specifically asked for hot food, and for his main course, he wanted the steak Veracruz made extra hot. Not Australian hot, but actually hot. Then he asked condescendingly if our kitchen could handle that. I felt my face flush with anger at his tone. I've been having a rough week already with equipment breaking down and a supplier missing a delivery, and this guy's attitude was the last thing I needed. I simply told him I would see what I could do and returned to the kitchen. I prepared the woman's chicken burrito with care, mild, flavorful with fresh ingredients and a delicate balance of spices. She hadn't done anything wrong after all. Then I turned my attention to his steak Veracruz. Normally, this dish was a tender steak topped with a sauce of tomatoes, bell peppers, onions, and a mild kick of chili. But for this special customer, I decided to rise to his challenge. I started by finely dicing 10 bird's eye chilies, seeds and all. These weren't commonly used in Australian cooking back then, but our guitarist liked them in his staff meals. I sweated off onions and bell peppers, then added the chilies along with a heaping tablespoon of chili powder and another of cayenne pepper. The fumes hit almost immediately. My eyes started watering and I had to run to the kitchen door just to catch my breath. The air in our small kitchen had become almost toxic. Back at the stove, I added our house tomato sauce to the mix and let it simmer. Then threw in some extra jalapenos from the jar and for good measure, another sprinkle of chili powder. Finally, I added the flash-fried steak to finish cooking in the sauce. The plate looked beautiful, if you didn't know it contained enough heat to strip paint. I rang the bell for our waitress who took both plates to the table. When she returned, she was grinning. She told me that the man had warned her that the dish better be hot, and she had assured him that I had made it specially for him. We both peeked through the kitchen door to watch. The man cut into his steak with that same smug look on his face. He took a large bite, clearly planning to show off his spice tolerance. Then it hit him. I've never seen someone's expression change so quickly. First confusion, then shock, then pure panic, all while desperately trying to maintain his composure in front of his date. His face turned bright red, sweat beaded on his forehead, and he reached for his water glass, emptying it in one gulp. The waitress asked if he would like more water, and he gasped out a "yes, please," clearly struggling to speak. His date was trying not to smile as he struggled through the meal, downing 3 pitchers of water. He barely spoke for the rest of dinner, too focused on the inferno in his mouth. When they were finishing, I stepped out of the kitchen. I asked them how everything was this evening. The date replied that her burrito was delicious and thanked me. The man looked at me, his eyes watering, face still flushed, and managed to croak out that it could have been hotter. I just smiled and nodded. The next week, the woman returned with her friends. They became regulars, and she told us that after dinner, she had thanked him for the evening and never accepted another date. According to her, he had spent the entire cab ride complaining about our amateur cooking and how we had ruined his night. Our restaurant developed quite a reputation after that. Occasionally, someone would come in asking for that really hot steak, but then I always made sure to warn them first. I never again made anything as fiery as I did that night, but the memory of that man's face as he realized what he'd gotten himself into still makes me smile. At some point in the restaurant business, the customer isn't always right, but they do always get exactly what they ask for. I was out shopping at the local mall, minding my own business when I saw her, a woman accompanied by a child, walking straight towards me. I knew what she was going to say before she even opened her mouth. You see, I live in a state where open carry is legal, and I choose to exercise that right for my own safety. I've been through an incident in the past that has forced me to carry a gun publicly in hopes of preventing such a thing from happening again. I used to be a regular person, going about my daily business, but one day, while I was at home with my family, we were the victims of a home invasion. We were robbed, beaten, and left for dead. It was a traumatic experience that left both physical and emotional scars. After that, I decided to arm myself for protection and started to carry my weapon in public. I took classes, obtained my permits, and became proficient in handling my weapon. It gives me a sense of security knowing that I can protect myself and my loved ones if something like that ever happens again. It's important for me to carry my weapon in a safe and responsible manner. I always make sure to follow the laws and regulations of my state, and I never use my weapon in a reckless or irresponsible way. I understand that some people may not agree with my choice, but it's a personal decision that I make for my safety and the safety of my family. When she approached me, the woman asked if her son could see my gun. She explained that he was interested in becoming a cop in the future and wanted to see one up close. I replied politely, explaining that I understood her son's interest in law enforcement and thought it was commendable that he wanted to pursue that career path. But I had to refuse, telling her that it wasn't safe for him or anyone else to handle a weapon without proper training and safety precautions. I also told her that I would be happy to recommend some resources for her son to learn about gun safety and handling if he was interested. I explained that I couldn't let him handle my weapon as it was not only illegal but also not responsible. Karen seemed not to understand or accept my explanation, and she started to raise her voice. She questioned my reasoning about safety, pointing out that I was carrying the gun around in public. I knew that I needed to defuse the situation and explained to her the importance of proper training and safety precautions when handling firearms. So I explained that just because it was legal for me to carry a weapon in public, it didn't mean it was safe for anyone to handle it without proper training and precautions. I told her that carrying a weapon in public was a serious responsibility, and it was important that I was properly trained and familiar with my weapon to ensure the safety of myself and those around me. But Karen wouldn't have it. She demanded that I show her son the gun right then and threatened to have me arrested if I didn't. I knew that I had to stand my ground and not compromise on safety. I apologized that I couldn't do what she wanted. I explained that it wasn't safe and I wasn't comfortable with it. I told her that I understood her son's curiosity, but emphasized that handing a weapon to someone without proper training could lead to accidents and injuries. I stressed that I had to prioritize safety above all else. I know that I'm sort of repeating myself at this point, but I had to be patient calm and contained in a situation like this. It's extremely dangerous if you get out of that zone with a gun on your side. I could see that Karen was becoming more agitated, and I knew that I needed to end the interaction before it escalated any further. I politely excused myself and walked away, leaving Karen and her child behind. Karen continued to threaten me. She warned me that I would be sorry for this and swore she would make sure I never carried a gun again. I could see the hostility and aggression in her eyes, and I knew that I needed to be prepared for anything. That's when she suddenly lunged at me, trying to snatch my gun out of its holster. I was caught off guard, but I quickly regained my composure and acted fast. I grabbed her wrist, twisted it, and with a firm grip, I called out for someone to dial 911. I knew that I needed to control the situation and prevent her from getting her hands on my weapon. But just as the mall manager came running towards us, he yelled at me to let her go and demanded to know what I was doing. From an outside point of view, it doesn't look good. He was worried about how it would look to others, but I knew that I was doing the right thing. I was protecting myself and others from a potentially dangerous situation. I complied with the manager's request and released Karen, but I kept my guard up, watching her closely. I knew that the situation could escalate at any moment and that I needed to be prepared for anything. And exactly as I thought, Karen wasn't done yet. She was still filled with anger and aggression, and she was looking for a way to lash out. She grabbed a glass bottle of milk from a nearby table and charged at me, trying to smash it on my head. I could see the determination in her eyes, and I knew that I had to act fast to protect myself. I quickly grabbed her wrist again, this time with the intention of disarming her and preventing her from causing harm. I twisted her arm, trying to make her drop the bottle, but she wouldn't let go. She was still struggling and trying to hit me with the bottle. At that moment, I knew that I had to protect myself by any means necessary, so I head-butted her, with the intention of stunning her long enough for her to drop the bottle and for me to disarm her. The headbutt was effective, and she dropped the bottle, falling unconscious to the ground. I quickly secured the bottle and made sure that it was out of her reach. I waited for the cops to arrive, keeping an eye on Karen to make sure she was safe and didn't wake up and try to attack again. When the police arrived, they immediately took control of the situation and secured the area. They interviewed witnesses and took statements from everyone involved, including me and Karen. They also reviewed the security footage of the incident, which clearly showed Karen initiating the altercation, and my actions were in self-defense. Based on the evidence and statements, they arrested Karen for assault and creating a public disturbance. They also took my statement and cleared me of any wrongdoing as I had acted in self-defense. The police officers explained to me that they would have to file a report and that the incident would be forwarded to the district attorney's office for further review. As they led Karen away in handcuffs, I overheard her son apologizing to the officers for his mother's behavior. One of the cops knelt down to the boy's level and gently explained that guns were serious tools, not toys, and that his mother's actions could have put many people in danger. The mall manager also approached me later and apologized for misreading the situation. He admitted that the security footage clearly showed I was defending myself and thanked me for handling the situation as safely as possible given the circumstances. For most of the year, my part-time job at the university dorm's front desk was perfect for a broke college student like me. I worked nights, which meant quiet hours, where I could study between helping the occasional resident who'd lock themselves out. The pay wasn't great, but the flexibility made it worth it. Then came move-out day. Any student who's lived on campus knows this day is pure chaos. The supervisors always doubled our staff, and I got stuck with a daytime shift, the busiest time when everyone was trying to leave at once. Our front desk was in the main lobby that led to a narrow one-way lane connecting to the parking garage. Every single car had to use this lane, making traffic management a nightmare. My shift started off manageable, just the usual complaints about not enough moving carts or how hot it was. Nothing I couldn't handle with a smile and some patience. That changed when a family of 3 approached my desk while my co-workers were all busy with other residents. I greeted them and asked how I could help. The The mother responded with a snippy tone, informing me she'd been stung by a bee and needed medical assistance right away. This immediately set off alarm bells. As student workers, we had strict rules about not providing any form of medical care, not even a simple bandage. It was a liability issue that had been drilled into us during training. I started to apologize and explain that, as a desk worker, I wasn't authorized to provide medical assistance, but the daughter interrupted me before I could finish. She demanded to know if we didn't even have a first aid kit, and why I couldn't just give them something for the sting. They weren't concerned about a potential allergic reaction. They were annoyed that I wasn't immediately solving their problem. I tried to remain professional. I explained that we didn't have first aid kits because I wasn't permitted to administer aid, and suggested they visit health services just across the quad for proper medical attention. The daughter reacted dramatically, questioning if I really expected them to walk all the way to health services in the heat. The mother folded her arms across her chest and complained that it was ridiculous. She told me she was in pain and asked why I was telling her to walk across campus instead of calling someone to help. At this point, a line was forming behind them. Other families were waiting patiently, but I could see them getting restless. This family clearly wanted special treatment, and I was getting tired of their attitude. That's when I had my moment of malicious compliance. I asked if they'd like me to call emergency services to send someone to help. The mother eagerly agreed, finally saying I was doing something useful. I picked up the phone and dialed 911, maintaining eye contact with the mother the entire time. When the operator answered, I explained the situation. The operator asked if the person was allergic to bee stings. I relayed this question to the mother, who admitted she wasn't allergic but complained that it really hurt. I passed this information to the operator, who then asked if they had tweezers to remove the stinger. When I asked the family this question, the daughter responded rudely, questioning why they would have tweezers and calling it a stupid question. I apologized to the operator for the family's rudeness and explained they specifically requested emergency medical assistance. I could hear the operator sigh. The operator told me they would send someone and asked me to have the family wait outside. After hanging up, I told the family that emergency services were on their way and asked them to step aside so I could help other residents. The mother asked what kind of response they were sending. When I said I wasn't sure, she expressed hope that it wouldn't be a fire truck, saying that would be embarrassing for just a bee sting. As the minutes passed, I could see the mother starting to realize she might have overreacted. She whispered something to her husband about just leaving, but he and the daughter reminded her that help was already on the way. Then we heard it, the unmistakable sound of sirens approaching. Through the glass doors, we all watched as a massive fire truck, lights flashing and sirens blaring, pulled up right in front of our building, completely blocking the narrow lane to the parking garage. The mother's face turned bright red. Everyone in the lobby, and I mean everyone, turned to look. The line of cars trying to access the parking garage began to grow, with frustrated drivers honking their horns. The mother tried to hide behind her husband as the firefighters, in full gear, entered the building asking for the bee sting emergency. I pointed them toward the family, and the mother reluctantly stepped forward. One of the firefighters looked at the small red mark on her arm, applied some cream, and gave her an ice pack. The whole process took less than 5 minutes, but by then the traffic backup had grown to over a dozen cars. When the firefighters left, the family hurried past my desk without making eye contact. The daughter mumbled something about getting her stuff from her room. For the rest of the day, I saw them dragging luggage through the lobby, heads down, as other residents whispered and pointed. I felt a little bad about calling 911 for a non-emergency, but watching that entitled family learn some humility made my entire move-out day shift worthwhile. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.